Hi, this is Hannah at Seattle Findings, and today we're going to be talking about disc cutters. Disc cutters come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and types, and people often buy them early on in their metalsmithing journey and have a lot of questions about them, like what features they should look for when shopping for one, how do you use a disc cutter, what is that handle for, how do you use centering dies, what are centering dies. We have all of the answers here. Just hold on a second. Let me introduce you to the two main types of disc cutter. This first one is a fixed width disc cutter. This is usually the most economical type of disc cutter. They definitely do the job, but they don't tighten down on your metal to hold it in place. This one has a handle on top. You can screw this handle down and it moves the two plates closer together. This will hold your metal securely in place when you're using it. It's a really handy feature to look for. When you're using the fixed width disc cutter, you have to apply constant pressure down with your hand to keep your metal from skipping underneath while you're striking. With the adjustable handle, you can see this isn't a problem. Another important feature to look at when you're shopping for a disc cutter is the punches. Not all punches are created equal. The punch in the next clip is from an expensive name brand disc cutter, and you can see it has two key features. It has this indent on the striking side, and then the cutting edge is cut at an angle, making it sharper. And this punch belongs to one of our economy disc cutters that mimics the same feature. This feature used to only really be available in the name brand models, but we've seen more economy disc cutters on the market that have these better designed punches. Here you'll see the punch compared to your standard economy disc cutter punch that is straight and flat. Most economy disc cutters are going to have this punch design, and in general it works just fine. It's a little bit more effort, but it will do the job. The other benefit of this punch design is the indent. The indent prevents this situation where your punch is stuck in your metal and you've got to use a tool to punch it through. With the indent, it comes out very easily with just a little tap of the hammer, no fuss. Speaking of this problem, a lot of people are very tempted to use a smaller punch to punch it through. Don't do that. You're going to damage your punch, make it dull, it's going to be harder to cut. It's a bad idea. Before we get into how to use a disc cutter, I just want to cover hammers really quick. Most of you probably have a hammer or two that look like this laying around at home, and it might be the first thing you reach for when you're wanting to use a disc cutter just because it's nice and heavy. I just want to tell you, you should probably not do that. You can damage the disc cutter, you can hurt yourself by chipping off steel shards. The proper hammer to use for these is generally going to be a brass mallet. A 2-pound one like this is excellent, and you can see it's softer than steel by the markings on the face, so that way you're deforming your hammer, you're not damaging your disc cutter, you're not risking injury. A 1-pound brass mallet might work well as well, but I recommend the 2. Let's talk about a couple more best practices when using a disc cutter. You should always anneal your metal before you use a disc cutter. This makes your cuts a lot easier and cleaner. Another thing that makes cuts easier and cleaner is lubricant. A lot of different brands make a similar product. My favorite is Pro Cut. It just has a consistency I prefer. It's a little bit more greasy and less flaky. Just apply this or a similar product to the end of your punches before you make a cut. Here's what can happen if you don't abide by these procedures. And excuse my form because I'm making a deliberate attempt to do it wrong here. Note how it's taking multiple strikes to get through the metal. This can cause your metal sheet to skitter around under your punch, and you wind up with an ugly looking disc like this, where it's marred from multiple strikes. You want to be able to cut your disc in as few strikes as possible. So, when you buy a disc cutter, at least if you buy one with a handle on it, one of the first things you might notice when you open the package, usually they're not packaged with the handle on to keep them safe in transit. So we get a lot of people asking how you install the handle because they're worried about breaking the disc cutter by taking it apart. So we're just going to show you real quick. So first, you're just going to take this screw out of the top. Sometimes you might need a wrench if it's too tight, but usually it can be loosened by hand. So you don't need to take the top plate off of the disc cutter to change the handle, but I'm going to do that just to show you what you'll find underneath if you do. You've got these 2 springs, and that's what keeps your 2 plates apart. You don't want those to fall out. You don't want to lose those. And then you've got these pins, and the pins are what make the 2 parts of the disc cutter align. So if you happen to take the top plate off to put it back on, just align the pins again and everything will be okay. Now to put the handle in, all you have to do is screw it in the top. It might be easier if you apply pressure with one hand while you screw the handle in with the other. Another common question we get about these disc cutters is, what do you do when the handle's in the way of the punch you want to use? All you have to do is put your thumb on the button in the middle and pull up on the handle, and it will swing around freely. Alright, now we know everything we need to know before cutting a disc. We have our annealed metal, we've chosen the size disc we want to cut. We're going to put the metal in the disc cutter and tighten down the handle if we have a disc cutter with a handle. And then we're going to put the punch in. Actually, we're not going to do that yet. We're going to get out the Pro Cut and we're going to lubricate our punch. You're going to do this just by smearing the lubricant around and focus mostly on the cutting edge corners. Alright, now we just have to strike it with the hammer. It's okay if it takes you a couple strikes to get it through. It's not going to be the end of the world. Alright, now we have a disc. And then it is really easy to just tap that punch out real quick if you've got these nice indented punches. I didn't make this video with the intention of advertising this particular disc cutter, but if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description. So now we have this piece of metal that we cut our disc out of, and if we wanted to, we could use this to make a washer. And you can just eyeball it if you wanted to, but we have a tool that makes that easier. These punches are called centering dies, and they're not really punches. You don't use them to punch anything. So, if we choose the size that we want the outer edge of our washer to be, and then pick the appropriate centering die to fit that size on the disc cutter, and we just put it in there and wiggle it around a bit, and that'll get the hole perfectly centered within the cut we're about to make. And then we can just tighten the handle down around it, and it's securely in place and perfectly centered. Now all we have to do is punch it out, and we have a perfect washer. And that's about all we have on disc cutters today. If you made it to the end of the video, we appreciate you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions for future videos, feel free to leave them in the comments. Subscribe, like our video, follow us on Instagram, blah blah blah. Y'all have a lovely day.